Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI. For weeks now, the Senate Public Accounts Committee has been probing various ministries, departments and agencies of government over their indictment now in a report by the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation. Now, the Auditor General, Anthony Ayine, had in a report last year indicted over 200 MDAs for failing to submit their audited reports for 2015, 2016, 2017 and 2018. According to him, some federal government ministries, departments and agencies spent 26.606 billion naira in 2017, for instance, without payment vouchers or requisite approvals for such expenditures. The report indicated further that revenue-generating agencies and other parastatals of government failed to remit over 20.675 billion naira into the federal treasury. Now, this and more prompted the Senate Public Accounts Committee, in line with Section 85 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, to invite heads of several federal agencies to appear before it over queries issued them by the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation. The list is quite long, but here are some of them. You have the Auditor General of the Federation, the Accountant General of the Federation, the Central Bank of Nigeria, Department of Petroleum Resources, DPR, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency. Others include Nigeria Customs Service, National Bureau of Statistics, Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Debt Management Office, DMO, National Pension Commission, the Pension Transitional Arrangement Directorate, PTAD, Head of Service of the Federation, and the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Now, that is just some of the names now on that list. But the Senate committee has been having a very difficult time now getting the heads of all these agencies to come defend themselves. A number of them have simply shunned the committee, prompting the senators to issue threats of removal against the heads of these agencies. Now, what exactly does the law say about submission of audited reports? According to the provisions of the Financial Regulations 32105, that's paragraph 5 now, chief executive officers of government, corporations, companies and commissions must submit both the audited accounts and management reports to the Auditor General of the Federation not later than May the 31st of the following year of accounts. But basically, most of these federal ministries, departments, and agencies have failed to comply with that provision. Joining me now to discuss this whole issue further is Eze Onyekpere. He is the lead executive director, Center for Social Justice. His organization has been following this whole audit report matter very closely for quite a while now. He joins me from Abuja. Thank you very much, Mr. Onyekpere, for joining us on the program. First off, I believe you must have been following what has been happening at the panel. That's a Senate panel that has been investigating, these agencies now. For instance, on Thursday, on February the 20th now, we saw the Director General, Head of Customs, as you say, that the Controller General of Customs now, appear before that committee, and we saw the banter now, or the argument, if you like, between the head of the customs and the accountant general over, the allegation of the non-remittance of 28 billion naira to the federal treasury. You look at what has been happening and how some of these heads of some of these agencies have shunned the committee. What have you got to say about that?
Well, I think what has been revealed in the 2017 Federal Audit Report is a litany of woes. And if you compare what happened in 2016, where 160 agencies failed, refused, and neglected to report, and by 2017, the number has blown up to 265, meaning an additional 105. The implication and the message is clear that those who failed to report in 2016, there were no sanctions, there were no consequences. So more and more MDAs joined in 2017 to say, what the heck, reporting? Since there is nothing at stake, nothing will happen if we fail, neglect, and refuse to report. So you've just mentioned a few. What you have is a field day that MDA leaders are simply ripping off the public treasury. You have the DPR, which is to account for about $3 billion. royalties that are outstanding and they are not taking concrete steps to recover. And if you multiply this by the exchange rate, you are talking of over $1 trillion. And you have all kinds of maneuvers, all kinds of withholding revenues due to the Federation account, due to the Consolidated Revenue Fund by MDAs, withholding taxes, value-added tax, and some of them even payee that are not remitting. So you have all manner of violations.
That is what is even more baffling. I mean, considering the anti-corruption posture of the government, why is it difficult, for instance? We know, for instance, the president has so far not given his assent to the audit bill. I guess the lawmakers have said they are going to rework the bill and then present it again to the president for assent. How do you explain the fact that agencies, for instance, like the Federal Inland Revenue Service, that is supposed to be like, it's an important agency of government, an agency that the government should rely on to get money, to fund the budget. And now we're saying we lack the needed funding to fund the budget, for instance. And then you have a situation where agencies, including the FIRS, are being accused of non-remittance of collections.
It is a very unfortunate situation. If you know the procedure that the Auditor General for the Federation uses, you can only come to one conclusion, that what is happening is impunity. When you prepare your accounts as an agency like FIRS, Auditor General comes and says, wait a minute, let me take a look at the accounts. If by the time they finish taking a look at the accounts and they are not happy or not satisfied with one, two, or two things, they issue an audit query. That audit query enables the management of the agency to explain to the satisfaction of the Auditor General how they arrived at those documents or those conclusions they have in their books. And it's only when the explanation given to the Auditor General is not satisfactory that he raises it as a key audit issue that he places in his report with specific recommendations. So we have a scenario where if you look at most of those audited agencies that were said to have violated the law and financial regulations, they were given opportunities. Some of them even failed to respond to the audit query. They simply ignored it, or the answers they gave were not satisfactory. So I think that it behoves on the president to take action even before the enactment of the audit bill. If they say the head of an MDA that withholds public money should be suspended from office, his salary stopped, if by the time a couple of those leaders, permanent secretaries, directors, executive secretaries are sacked or just suspended, or their salaries withheld, or even the allocation of their agencies withheld or surcharged, then they will wake up. They will be the ones rushing to appear before the PAC to explain themselves so that they can be brought back to office. But the situation is like anything can happen. Nobody seems to be in charge. The administration is getting rudderless. Everybody is simply doing whatever he likes. The head of a commission simply walks away with 4 or 5 SUVs when he's retired or when his tenure expires. And the Auditor General said, return those cars. The gentleman or the woman simply ignores and carries on. And there is no law or there's no regulation justifying such brigandage on the public treasury. Nothing supporting it. So it's just like, I can do it and I've done it. What can you do?
It's indeed quite baffling that you would have government agencies not, submit audit reports and what have you. Now, let's talk about the audit bill itself. And we don't have, it's not been assented to by the president, but how important is this audit bill? And how could it prevent, for instance, the kind of things we're seeing now? If we had this audit law in place, how could it help to prevent what we're seeing, what some of these agencies are doing now?
It is a very, very important bill to the extent that the Constitution just does the skeletal work to say, oh, there should be an Auditor General, he should audit X and Y and Z accounts, he should look at others and comment on them. But the process, procedure, powers, duties, functions of the Auditor General are not spelled out anywhere again, because the Audit Law of 1956 ceased to become part of the laws of the Federation since the review that was done about 1999 or thereabout. So that law bill specifically gave the Auditor General powers to surcharge any sum from anybody who has caused a loss on the treasuries. For instance, If you are the Director General or Permanent Secretary of an agency and you've caused a loss of ₦1 billion on the Treasury, the Auditor General can ask you to bring the money back. Even if you say you don't have the money, he starts by suspending your salary. You can no longer earn the salary, and possibly the person gets suspended from occupying that position. So he now comes from outside, he's virtually removed. And then the Auditor General is given a power under that law, not just to summon, where you fail to attend the summon, to issue a warrant of the arrest, with the law enforcement agencies who will now go and execute by arresting the person and bringing the person before the Auditor General to give evidence on oath. And whereby you give false evidence, of course, the person will be liable to the crime of perjury. So it has revolutionized a lot of things, including even answering the question, who audits the Auditor General? The Auditor General audits other persons, other institutions and agencies, but nobody audits him, because under the bill, the National Assembly is supposed to appoint an independent auditor every year to audit the accounts of the Auditor General. So why is auditing others? Somebody else is auditing him. And it has created a lot of, ideas that will make the audit function much more effective. For instance, today, the audit function, the Auditor General's office, is starved of funds because he gets funds from his auditees, from the budget office, from those people who is supposed to go and use a toothpick to examine what they are doing. That's the persons who determine the level of funding for his office. So at the end of the day, the office is starved of funds. But this time around, if that bill it becomes law, the Auditor General will propose his budget, not just to the budget office or anybody, straight to the National Assembly, and the money will come as a statutory transfer, so that they get their money like INEC, like the Public Complaints Commission, like NDDC, like National Judicial Council. Once there is a vote for them in the budget, you cannot give an excuse not to give it to them. So that's the kind of scenario it creates, because these days, even the meager budget that is approved for them, sometimes they don't get more than 40 or 50% of it. Once the salaries are paid, the money for overheads and the capital vote is barely released. So these are the kind of things the bill wants to take care of. And we are surprised that the president did not even follow due process. If the president disagrees with a bill, what does he do? He sends a letter back to the Senate
Exactly, but in this case, but it's not the case in this. It's not the case with this.
To say I'm not happy with section A, B, C, D, or the entire law that you have proposed before me for assent. This time around, there's evidence that the bill got to him. He neither assented, neither did he bring it back to say, I don't like what you've done because of section A, B, C, D. He simply ignored. So that is body language. It's also sending a very wrong message to auditees who are now violating the law, thinking that the president does not care. That's the unfortunate scenario.
And I have to ask you this. Now that, the president has withheld his assent now, has actually not, raised any concerns at all now, or identified those areas that he might have disagreement with. What exactly can the National Assembly, especially the Senate, do? Because the Senate has been talking about, reworking the bill and all of that. But you want to rework a bill where the president has actually not, said what he doesn't like with it?
The bill is already represented at the House of Reps, and I understand is also in the process of being represented at the Senate if it has not been already done. So it is up to the National Assembly as the representatives of the Nigerian people. When they pass the bill again and the president plays that kind of game, they should now use the overwhelming majority, two-thirds majority, to pass it again and let it become law, so that it will be clear that the president is even not supporting the campaign against corruption. Because the Auditor General's office is such an important office with enormous constitutional powers that, they don't just come and say, oh, you are corrupt. They look at your documents and give you opportunity to explain. It's only when your explanation is not satisfactory that they now upscale it and start writing it in the report. So it's a highly professional and competent office that should be given all the support in terms of financial resources, allowed to recruit the best hands, and be able to follow up on audit recommendations.
Just before I let you go, do you think this probe by the Senate Public Accounts Committee would result in anything at all?
It's not a probe as such. It's a hearing, which is what they're supposed to do once they get the Auditor General's report. I believe that the members of the committee are honorable and decent men and women. So I believe that we will get to the bottom of these violations. And of course, in civil society, we're also taking steps to ensure that these things don't get off the public radar, and also using various judicial processes or court processes to see how we can hold these duty bearers to account. So that's also what we are thinking of and what we are doing in civil society.
All right, Mr. Eze Onyekwere, thank you very much for joining us on the program and for your contributions.
My pleasure.
That was Eze Onyekwere, the lead director, Center for Social Justice in Abuja.